soft palate. You know, the chances of me asking hard palate are probably slim, but soft palate, you know, it's the soft tissue on the roof of the mouth. Palate is referring to roof of the mouth. And at the tip of the soft palate is the uvula. So if I'm pointing to the tip, it's uvula. If I'm up here on like the more parallel with the hard palate, then it's soft palate. So uvula is at the tip. If I was doing soft palate, I'd be pointing up higher, but I would be right at the tip if I want uvula. And we'll talk about uvula in lecture, what it does. Tongue I cover for completeness. You know I'm not putting a sticker on the tongue and asking the tongue. You know, but the tongue is just covered for completeness because it is the digestive. With salivary glands, like the parotid is seen pretty easy on both of them, both head models we have. You know, the giant one in the cheek is the parotid gland. And then submandibular, it's small on this one, and it's more easily seen on this one, you know, under the mandible, submandibular. And then the best place to see sublingual is on this model. It's not really shown too well on this one, but sublingual is shown very good on this one. And so you know if I have 3 salivary glands, I'm gonna ask one of them. You just don't know which one. And if you get mumps, it's the parotid that's inflamed. For the pharynx, that's review. We did that in the respiratory system, but you know 2 of the regions play a role in digestion. So remember, if it's behind the naso, so that's not digestive. If it's behind the nasal cavity, nasopharynx. Behind the mouth, oropharynx. From the hyoid down, then it's going to be laryngopharynx. So that's the little tube that's behind those structures. And we'll talk, and like in lecture, we talk about the difference of how a stratified squamous and oropharynx and laryngopharynx. Let's see, the lower esophageal sphincter. Do I not list esophagus? Esophagus is, yeah. Esophagus, oh my gosh. It's yellow on this model, and it's tan on that model over there. There's a model over there that can be used, like the Muscle Man model, and but it's just tan and it's in the same place. So the esophagus goes behind the trachea, and it's the food tube. And the reason it's stratified squamous is because you're not absorbing any nutrients in your esophagus. It's just you're using peristalsis to massage your food down to your stomach. But it's not just like plopping down there, you are massaging it to go down there. So then the lower esophageal sphincter is how food gets into your stomach, and you see it's got like a number on the top of the stomach, like how do I get into the stomach? The lower esophageal sphincter. So people have acid reflux is because acid from the stomach is coming up and getting into the esophagus, you know, through that. It's not a true sphincter. It's always kind of open a little bit. Then we get to the stomach. And so I never ask lesser curvature and greater curvature. You know, it's like I cover them, but I'm telling you, I never ask greater curvature, lesser curvature. But you do have to worry about everything else on there as pretty much fair game, where rugae are the folds in the stomach. And they're not like the hills in the intestines. These folds, like as the stomach expands, they disappear. It allows for expansion of the stomach. And we also have rugae in the bladder. It allows for it to fill up with pee. And then how I get out of the stomach, it's got a purple structure with a number on it. That's the pyloric sphincter. So then you have the 3 regions of it. And so the cardia is just a little region that goes right around the entrance. You know, it's right underneath where the lower esophageal sphincter is. That's the cardia. And even though the stomach is covered in mucus, like the stomach has got more mucus in other parts of the GI tract to protect it from all the hydrochloric acid, so you don't damage the stomach lining, which we're always replacing every few days. We're replacing the stomach lining. But the cardia even puts out more mucus in other places. And then, like the fundus, they'll define it by saying that's the part touching the diaphragm. So when you see how the stomach sits in, so the fundus is like my hand's covering the fundus. It's not super big. It's just not the part here. It's just like there, but the part that's touching the diaphragm. And then most of it's the body. And then you can see where it gets like a little straight section at the end. The pylorus is where the pyloric sphincter is. So of the 4 regions of the stomach: cardia, fundus, body, pylorus. Okay, with the small intestine, like the small intestine and large intestine, like this will just be sitting somewhere as a station. Like it'll be sitting as a station, like this. And then plus I'll likely, if I want to do one of the sphincters, I'll have a reproductive model, because you can only really see the external and internal anal sphincters using one of the reproductive models. And so the duodenum is not on this. The duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, and it's a backwards J. And so it's like a mixing bowl. It's where we put the contents of the pancreas, of the gallbladder, of the liver, plus the stomach. It all goes into the duodenum. And that's why the pancreas is nestled up against it, because the pancreas has to put its stuff into the duodenum. And there's a structure, there's a thing that says plicae circulares, which are the hills in your small intestine. When you can see them in the duodenum is where you see them. And most of you guys already know this stuff, because like several of the tables were saying the right stuff as you were studying, and when you were looking at this the other day. So plicae circulares are the hills inside of the duodenum. And then you can see on the back where it goes in to jejunum, and then, so it's up here, the jejunum would be marked in the patient's upper left, and that's several feet. And then ileum, like you have this thing called ileocecal valve, which I'll show in a second. So you know you're going to go from the ileum into the cecum. So it has to be down here in the bottom corner. So jejunum, ileum. And it goes to the ileocecal valve, which they have here with this like number like 437 on it. So it's just, how do I get from the small intestine into the large intestine? And the first part of the large intestine is the cecum. So ileum, cecum, ileocecal valve. And then the cecum, they call it like a blind pouch. It's just the very bottom, the very first part of the large intestine, the part that's ripped open. And then on it, it says appendix. It's also called like the vermiform appendix, this thing sticking off. That is the appendix. And when your appendix ruptures, people get really sick, because now E. coli is getting out into your tissues. So that is the appendix, and it's off of the cecum. And then for colon, you have to know, I'm covering this on it, you have to know not just colon, but ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid, which is S-shaped, and then the rectum is a straight pipe at the end. And then the anus is at the very end of the rectum, and the anus is two muscles. And so rectum is the straight pipe at the very end. And the anus, it's like, if this right here is like the very end, the bottom of my fingers where the poo is coming out, you have like right next to the hole, the internal anal sphincter, and then just lateral to that on both sides, external anal sphincter. So that's just like what it looks like on the reproductive model. It was like you have the hole that poo's coming out, internal anal sphincter, external anal sphincter on either side. Well, I think this will be good enough for the video. I think people can look at it and it'll make sense. So then you have a haustrum. Each of these little folds, each unit of the large intestine is a haustrum. Haustra, plural. So that each mound is a haustra. And they talk about some movement through your large intestine is called haustral churning. Tinea coli is this muscle that's going across the front. So it's gray on this model, but it's helping with movement through the large intestine. Let's see. Pancreas, it's ripped open here. Like they're ripping it open to show like the pancreatic duct, but it's just ripped open here. On that model over there, it just is not ripped open. So even though it has like white with yellow on either side, that's like, well, what if we rip open the pancreas? What does it look like? But it's nestled against to the duodenum, because it has to put stuff into the duodenum. Duodenum is like a big mixing bowl. Then we get to the liver, and I'll tell you, like I never ask the falciform ligament, just more for completeness. And when it says, it didn't say names of 4 lobes on there, it just says there's 4 lobes. Well, I'm just like, I don't really care if you know the names of the 4 lobes of the liver. But the liver always has stuff that can be asked on it, because one, you see the gallbladder with the green little sac underneath, and then it's ripped open on this side. And then you had to worry about cystic duct and bile duct. You know, some books will call it like common bile duct. And so the cystic duct is coming directly from the gallbladder. Like the duct that's taking bile from the gallbladder is called the cystic duct. And then on this model, I didn't make, right and left hepatic duct. Hepatic means liver, but there's like two things that merge. You got the right and left hepatic duct, and where they come together is the common hepatic duct. Did I list common hepatic duct? Yeah, common hepatic duct is listed on there. And then what you're seeing, there's like a little number, you just see the start of the bile duct. So it's also called the common bile duct. So it's like where the cystic duct and the common hepatic duct come together starts the common bile duct, because you're delivering bile from both of those structures down to the duodenum. So it's like cystic duct directly comes from the gallbladder. Then the right and left hepatic ducts merge, and where they come together is the common hepatic duct. And then where the common hepatic duct, after where it meets up with the cystic duct, that becomes bile duct. And all you see is the number that's saying this is where the bile duct starts. But there's always a liver sitting upside down at a station, not by itself with another model, but it's always, you always have the liver. And then tooth, always a station. So crown above the gums, root below, where they meet is the neck. Enamel, like if I was asking regions, I'd ask it on the outside, and then if I'm asking the other stuff, I ask it on the inside. So enamel, and if I want region, I will say identify region. But enamel is like the hardest substance in the body, and it's what's lining the crown. So the white on here, and it can, if you do a lot of coffee and acidic foods, you start to lose your enamel. And then like dentin is kind of like bone. So most of what we see here is dentin, like the like more tan stuff. And then we have the pulp cavity and the root canals. So pulp cavity and root canals are leading down from those. Periodontal ligament, you can't see on this model. It's going all the way around the root, all over. So I just list that because there are people who are dental hygiene who should have heard the term periodontal ligament. And so it's what connects this to your maxilla or to your mandible. And then there's like a number 5 on here. It's like, they don't make it a different color, but cementum is what's going around the root. So it's not the same as enamel. So if like when stuff starts contacting cementum, it doesn't have the same resistance that you're getting of enamel. So I have lost one tooth in the very, very back, and I didn't get a replacement because it's like the very, very back tooth. My teeth have shifted a little bit back there, and now the cementum is exposed. So now I have to worry about, well, how is acid going to affect that, because it's not the same. And gingivae I list, but can you see gingivae?
Yeah.
It's your gums. So we can't really see it on a model, but it's your I mean, you know, they don't even have it shown on one of the models. But I listed so people have heard gingivae, so that they know what gingivitis is, when you have inflammation of your gums. And then the mesentery, it says you won't be able to see on our models. Just introducing the terms greater omentum, lesser omentum. And it says one's attached to the greater curvature, one's attached to the lesser curvature. We will see that on the cat. We will see the greater omentum when we do the cat dissection, which is on test 3. Like test 3 is when we get to the cat. And seam.